I don't know whether we'll get to $500 a share from your mouth to God's ears, but I think we could get to a couple of $100 a share. Sure. No problem. And we bought in the 30s. And if we get to 200 or 250, he's buying back stock and so on, then it's a decent return.
In a recent talk with students at William and Mary College, Monish Pabrai revealed in detail why his fund's largest investment is in Micron technology, a stock that he's been accumulating since late 2018 at prices not too dissimilar to where the stock trades today. In this video, let's take a look at some of the things Monish Pabrai had to say about his investment in Micron. Now, one resource that will definitely help you keep up to speed with how your own portfolio is tracking is ShareSite, the sponsor of today's video. The end of the year is right around the corner, as is tax time in many parts of the world, and ShareSite is the tool that I've been using for more than 2 years at this point to understand the true performance of my own investment portfolio, considering capital gains, dividend income, and currency fluctuations. You can easily upload your transactions to ShareSite or do it through your broker like I do, and if you have dividend reinvestment plans, ShareSite will do all of those calculations for you. And ShareSite can make tax time a breeze, which I can definitely attest to. It generates up to 12 different reports, some related to stock portfolio performance and some related to tax, and those reports are tailored to wherever you might be in the world. You can try ShareSite for free forever by heading to the link sharesite.com/investingwithtom, and if you decide to upgrade to a premium subscription for more features, that link will get you 4 months free off of an annual subscription. Now, throughout this talk, Pabrai mentions that one of the core reasons he's invested in Micron is due to general consolidation that's happened in the memory business, to the point now where we're really only down to 3 main players, and in Pabrai's mind, 3 rational players, kind of an oligopoly setup where a lot of different companies can compete, I guess, in harmony and all make reasonable profits. And this is what Pabrai had to say on that topic after a conversation about oligopolies with none other than Charlie Munger.
A discussion a while back with Charlie Munger. I didn't directly discuss Micron with him, but I discussed oligopolies and especially oligopolies where they can't. So one of the things about oligopolies is that if you're, let's say, Coke and Pepsi, you can't sit in a room and set prices. That's kind of antitrust violation and all kinds of other illegal behavior. But as long as you don't engage in a whole bunch of irrational actions, oligopolies can do really well. So I asked Charlie about kind of the nature of oligopolies, and he said that Buffett had studied a long time ago Coke and Pepsi bottlers in wide number of regions in the US and around the world. And he found that in probably 95 or 97% of cases, both the bottlers made good money. Basically, these are strong brands and people have preferences and such. It's not infinite pricing power. If Pepsi is on sale and Coke is really expensive, you might switch. But in some geographies, maybe the 3 to 5% of geographies, one of the owners decided that they wanted a much larger market share. And so they engaged in price wars and a lot of other behavior to try to take market share. And of course, your competitor is going to react to that. And so you ended up in some markets where nobody made money. What I see with Micron and Hynix and Samsung is that I was really surprised originally when I was looking at the businesses about the frequency with which they speak to the markets. They seem to, like, if they have the quarterly calls, then they'll have some investor conference and they'll do updated guidance. So there's a lot of stuff going on. It's just not 4 times a year that they're telling the investing public what's going on. And it took me a while to realize that they're not talking to me. They're talking to each other. So if they go on a rooftop, if Samsung goes on a rooftop and screams and says, my CapEx is going to be 20 billion this year, and I'm basically going to produce so many chips, for example. 2 days later, Micron will make a similar announcement from a rooftop saying, my CapEx is going to be 10 billion a year this year, and this is the number I'm going to produce.
So Monish Pabrai is clearly a big fan of Micron, but it's not always clear for us as everyday investors just how big a bet Pabrai is making on this particular stock. Monish invests a lot outside of the US, where there's a lot less transparency around exactly what companies he's invested in. And in this talk with students, he actually revealed how big a bet Micron is in his portfolio.
Micron is not 37%. Basically, all the holdings don't get reported, like the 13F doesn't report our foreign holdings and so on. I don't invest more than 10% of assets into anything. So when we made the investment into Micron, it was a 10% bet. It had become maybe, I think at the peak, it was maybe 25% or so a bet, and it's pulled back. So it might be like around 20 or a little less than that.
Now, it's quite well known at this point that in 2020, Monish Pabrai underwent quite the change in investment philosophy, switching from buying cigar butt style businesses or businesses that he viewed as trading at 50 cents on the dollar to trying to buy higher quality, long-term growers and compounding type businesses. And that decision was pretty heavily influenced by UK fund manager Nick Sleep, who returned over 20% per year to investors by buying into a small number of very high quality businesses. And when Nick Sleep wrapped up his fund, he really only had 3 core positions in the portfolio: Amazon, Costco, and Berkshire Hathaway. Now, a key part of Nick Sleep's analysis of all 3 of those companies, particularly a business like Amazon, was this idea of destination analysis, kind of forgetting the next quarter or two's performance, but instead focusing on where the business could be in 5 or 10 years' time, and what that could mean for long-term owners of a business like, in his case, Amazon. And it really seems that Monish Pabrai has taken that destination analysis approach completely to heart with Micron.
In any business I own, we don't care about the next quarter or even the next year. With Micron, basically, I think it's just destination analysis. Basically, what they think will happen in the industry is that the memory guys are making about 150 billion a year top line, all 3 of them together. And that 150 billion, they think, goes to about 300 billion in 7 or 8 years. And we don't know whether that'll happen, whether it's 250 billion or 350 billion or where that number is, but it's likely to be around 300 billion, maybe higher. And Micron might be 75, 85 billion or something thereabouts, maybe 100 billion of that number. And so then you just say, would they be banging out something like 20, 30 billion a year in cash flow? And yeah, I think they could.
Now, just for reference, Micron currently trades at a market cap of about $60 billion. So if they can genuinely achieve that $20 to $30 billion in cash flow in 7 or 8 years, like Monish Pabrai is kind of working on here in terms of his destination analysis for Micron, that would mean that they're only trading at like a P of 2 or 3 on that future earnings number. Now, does a large, growing, increasingly stable and predictable business tend to trade at 2 or 3 times earnings in the United States? Absolutely not. If we put even just a long-term market average multiple of, say, 15 times earnings on that future cash flow that Pabrai mentions here, that would imply a stock price somewhere between 5 and 7.5 times higher than where Micron currently trades. Now, of course, the big risk here is that those cash flows won't, turn up for Micron, but clearly Monish Pabrai really likes the odds here. Now, finally, Monish Pabrai is asked point blank here by one of the students where he thinks Micron stock could get to in a few years, and he shares his thoughts on that topic, and that's a pretty unusual and rare thing for a fund manager to do. But true to Monish Pabrai tradition, he reminds the students that really mistakes are par for the course. He's got a basket of different investments in his portfolio. Micron happens to be one of them, but he reminds students that even with a high error rate, you can still generate good returns. And interestingly, he also touches on his level of conviction with Micron. How much confidence does he have in those cash flows eventually turning up in 7 or 8 years versus some of the other investments in his portfolio?
Philosophy. You don't really care if you're getting Micron for $120 a share or $50 a share. If you believe it's going to $500 or $1,000 a share, right?
After this, let's go to Tommy Tiger.
I don't know whether we'll get to $500 a share from your mouth to God's ears, but I think we could get to a couple $100 a share. Sure. No problem. And we bought in the 30s. And if we get to 200 or 250, he's buying back stock and so on, then it's a decent return. It's the thing about Micron is it's not my, I would say, highest conviction idea. We made a 10% bet. There's nothing wrong with the business. It's a good business. They've got good management. They understand capital allocation, all these things. So my take is let it run. We got 9 other bets. And we want them non-correlated. And yeah, probably at the end of the day, what will happen is 5 of them or 6 of them will work. and maybe one or two might even have a loss and one or two might flatline or something like that. And if that actually transpires, we would have a massive home run. No problem.
So Micron is clearly a big bet for Monish Pabrai, and it's actually a pretty popular stock among a lot of super investors. It shows up in the portfolio of Li Lu. That's because Monish and Li Lu actually collaborated on that particular investment idea. It also turns up in the portfolio for Guy Spear, Prem Watsa, and even Seth Klarman. And it's fascinating to hear an investor like Monish Pabrai talk about the investment case for Micron in real time as the investment is still playing out. Now, if you want to check out the full talk from Monish Pabrai, I will leave that linked in the description below, along with the share site offer of 4 months free off of an annual subscription. But that's it from me for this one, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.